Alrighty, welcome in everyone to just another edition of Just Another College Football Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tommy Brzee. It is Tuesday, September 30th. Sorry for a little bit of late reaction show, but we do have a reaction to the incredible Week 5 that we just had. We'll get into all the big games first. We'll start with Oregon, Penn State, Alabama, Georgia. A couple of curses still reign true in those two games. Then we'll get to LSU, Ole Miss, as well as USC, Illinois in that first slate. Then we'll get into a little bit of a whip around a number of different games to get to. Wake Forest had one stolen from them against Georgia Tech. Florida State goes down against Virginia, and a number of other things I want to touch on. And then we'll finish it off. We'll get into some winners and losers from this weekend, and I'll give some final updates as we get out of the show. A couple of changes coming to the show here pretty soon. But let's go ahead and jump into this, and let's talk about these big games that have gone on this past weekend. Let's start up there in Happy Valley. We'll kind of work our way back through the day as it went through, but this is kind of a tough game to parse through. It's kind of a tough game to come out with very, very aggressive beliefs because you come in and Oregon jumps out to a 17-3 lead. Obviously, the offense has started incredibly slow, but they jump out to a 17-3 lead early in the second half, and you're thinking, okay, this is going to be a story of Penn State fell way short, and this thing is not getting better. It's actually getting worse in these big-time games, and then they find a way back into it. They force overtime, and they fall short eventually. So I'm left a little bit confused. Now, there's some massive reasons for Penn State fans to be upset about this, and we'll talk about that more here in a second, but the reality of the matter is this Oregon team deserves a lot of praise for what they did on Saturday night, and this was entirely a program. This was entirely a program win, and I've been thinking about it since this game went on. I can't think of a program in the country that is more in line with each other than Oregon is. And it's not necessarily to say Oregon's the best team in the country or the best coaching staff in the country or the best play callers, although they're very close to all of those things. The reality of the matter is Dan Lanning comes with a certain amount of energy every single week, and we saw it in the post-game presser. He comes with an aggressive amount of energy every single week, and all of the players follow suit. There's not a player that's not trying their hardest. There's not a player that's not cheering their hardest if they're not in the game. There's not a player that walks into that stadium not wanting to win more than anything else in the world, and that cannot be overstated. It's obviously not something that jumps off the page or is very tangible, but you can feel it. You can feel that this team emulates what their coach is and the way that he approaches things, as well as the coordinators. They are incredibly aggressive in between the 40 and the 40 or the 35 and the 35. They're going to go for it essentially every time on fourth down because that's who they are. That's who Dan Lanning is, and everyone has followed that suit. This was the perfect example of that. It's a game where you jump out to a lead, you're playing physical, you're playing good football, a team gets back into it, and you're able to close it out because you have that toughness all throughout your program. It's not just with the head coach, it's not just with the quarterback, or just with a couple of defensive players. It's with absolutely everyone. It's another reason why they can continue to bring in new guys and be able to get them to play really quickly because everyone's on the same page. You know, Bear Alexander comes in from USC, and we're talking about him. Can he be this impact player? Can he step up? Can he become the player that he is more than capable of being? He went to the right place because everyone around him is working their butts off and they're doing the exact thing that Bear Alexander needed to do. And he's played really good football for them, including in this football game. But the guy I want to talk about is Dante Moore. I think he is the story of this game. Obviously, Penn State is a massive story as well, and we'll get to that. But going into Happy Valley and going 29 for 39, 248, and 3 scores is outright insane. He made all the throws he needed to make on the run, in the pocket, navigated the pocket incredibly well. The coolest thing about this kid is he's a very gutsy runner. Not necessarily an elite runner, not an elite athlete by any means, but absolutely a guy that if you need 5 yards, he's going to find a way to get you 5 yards. He did it a number of times in this football game. And I'll be honest, I was totally wrong about him. Now, I knew he was an elite talent, and I thought he was going to play good football. I didn't think he was going to be all the way here. I didn't think his head was going to be clear enough to go into a stadium like that and play that clean of football. It was incredible to watch, and as of right now, you're going to be hard-pressed to find a quarterback playing better football than Dante Moore. For the defense, played really good football. The fourth quarter obviously got on top of Oregon, no doubt about that, but you hold a Penn State team to 4 yards per carry, you're going to beat them, plain and simple. If you can keep Nick Singleton and Katron Allen from being downright dominant, frankly, in a game, you're going to be able to beat Penn State. That's exactly what happened in this game. And frankly, you probably could have beaten them in regulation if you made one more play defensively. But at the end of the day, a very strong defensive performance, at least from where I was standing. But we talked about it. This one was about the Oregon program. It wasn't necessarily about one individual player. It wasn't about anyone doing anything absolutely spectacular. I think they had 3 guys over 60 yards receiving. They had a couple of rushers over 60 yards, but none over 80. It was just everyone coming together, doing what they needed to do, doing their job, and doing it with incredible passion and energy. And that can't be overstated. In a day of college football where there's so many teams that seem to be disjointed and all over the place, like Penn State looked in this game, it cannot be overstated how much it matters for 115 plus the coaching staff to be moving in unison. It's a very hard thing to do, and Dan Lanning has pulled it off incredibly, incredibly well. As for Penn State, 2 things can be true. You did not have to win this game. You absolutely can make the playoff. If you find a way to beat Indiana, you can lose to Ohio State, you can still make the playoff. You also had to win this game. And I know that sounds a little bit crazy, but you're looking at it right now, and from where I'm standing, and look, we can make the argument that they were closer. We can make the argument that they forced this thing to overtime when it looked like it could have been a blowout. All of that stuff is good stuff. There's no doubt about that. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day because you still look up at the scoreboard at the end of the thing and you are down by 6 points. That is the end-all be-all of this football game. That's the end-all be-all of the last 11 years of Penn State football. They got to win one of these games because the reality is for Penn State football moving forward, yes, you can make the playoff. Yes, you can go 10-2 and you can do all the things that you wanted to do this season. I'm not trusting you when you meet an Oregon, when you meet a Texas, when you meet a Georgia or an Ole Miss or an LSU in the playoff because there's something missing there. And it's hard to describe as a good, talented football team that isn't all that far away from some of these elite teams in the country. They just can't get it done. And I think there's problems with play calling. I think Drew Aller is not the quarterback that a lot of people, including myself at times, has made him out to be. I think this is just a team that is not all the way there. The confidence is not to the level that Oregon has, which I don't know how many teams have the confidence level that Oregon has, but at the end of the day, it's not there. Your star quarterback is not playing good enough football. You're not calling plays that are really conducive to a team that can't handle a lot of movement, can't handle a lot of motion because they made a lot of mistakes in pre-snap that they wouldn't have if they didn't get so cute on the offensive side of the ball. You have an offensive line that was meant to be one of the very best in the country. They can't push around anyone right now. So there's a lot of problems with this Penn State team. It's not just Drew Aller. It's not just James Franklin. Doesn't change that a lot of this falls on their shoulders. And Drew Aller has to make that pass late in the game. Now, why are you calling a pass play when you've been able to run the ball late in that game? I don't know. But at the end of the day, you're in a position now where you're a Penn State team that, again, you're Penn State. You're a good team that's going to be able to go beat UCLA and Northwestern over the next 2 weeks. Then you're going to go to Iowa and probably get a win. Then you go to Ohio State, you're probably going to lose. Then you find a way to play Indiana. If you win that one, great. It doesn't change the narrative around you. You have to find a way to win a playoff game. It's not to say that they can't. There's still a lot to like about this football team. But this was a chance, and it was about as good of an opening as you're going to get a young quarterback coming on the road to a tough environment at night where you have about as close to talent level as you're going to have to these Oregons and Ohio States, and you can't find a way to get it done. There's not really much more to say. Obviously, there is still plenty of time to get things together and to play better football, but at a certain point, you are who you are, and as of right now, Penn State's a team that cannot win a national title because they can't beat the Oregons of the world. But we'll see what they can do moving forward. Obviously, plenty of time left for Oregon. They get a bye week and then a huge one against Indiana, which will be really, really fun to watch. But at the end of the day, this is just another missed opportunity for Penn State and another one for Oregon where a lot of people were questioning them coming in, and they shut the door on that very quickly. Alabama beats Georgia. I've heard that number of times before, just like Penn State, and Georgia and Kirby Smart, they can't beat Alabama. It can't be explained. It's a very real thing. I don't know why, but it is. They coach this game just a little bit differently every single time they see that script A on the other sideline, no matter who the coach is. It's really hard to describe. Now, all the talk will be about the 4th down with 13 seconds left. And a couple of things I want to make very clear. I don't love it. I would have gone for the field goal, first of all. Second of all, if you're going to go fast, I would have gone with another running back rather than Cash Jones, and that's been talked about plenty. And third, if you're going to go fast, go straight forward. don't go to the outside. I don't really know why that's a controversial thing that some people do if you're gonna do that. And I don't necessarily disagree with the approach of that idea. We're gonna go for it on fourth down, let's go quickly, let's try to get these guys off balance. That's all well and good, and that has worked a number of times. If you're gonna do it, you have a 225-ish pound quarterback, run a QB sneak. Run something that goes straight forward, that you don't have to, the defensive line can't get their feet set quickly, and the offensive line just has to move forward. They don't have to do any combo blocks, which one got blown up, and that's why you didn't get the fourth down. So just a couple of things there where I understand the idea. I understand what they're trying to do. With 13 minutes left in the game, I would have tied it and just kind of played out the rest of this thing because Alabama did not score in the second half of this football game. You kind of had a little bit of control of it. If you tie that game, I think Alabama gets a little bit nervous and maybe you're able to close it out. But at the end of the day, Alabama's able to get the stop. And the other thing is, that's not where the game was lost for Georgia. Plain and simple, that fourth down call was not where the game was lost. It was lost on third down. It was lost by Ty Simpson playing as good a football as you will see any quarterback play maybe the entirety of the season. He was incredible in the first half. He was absolutely lights out, and it wasn't like he was getting 3rd and 3s, 3rd and 4s. He was getting 3rd and 9, 3rd and 12s, 3rd and 10s, and he was ripping the ball in the tight windows. He played incredible football. And a lot of people are questioning the Georgia defense, and there's plenty of things to question about the Georgia defense. I'm not arguing that at all, but when a quarterback is playing at that level, you're not going to be able to do a lot. Just plain and simple. Even when Bama wasn't able to run the ball, and they haven't been able to run the ball, if there's a quarterback playing at that level of football, you're going to have a really tough time slowing him down. That's just the plain truth of the matter, and it's not necessarily to say the Georgia defense did a great job in this game. They didn't. They really did struggle early on in this game, but at the end of the day, Ty Simpson made some throws that there's just not much you're going to be doing with. And the Alabama pass offense in general, as good as you're going to find in the country. I think Ohio State could match them if they really wanted to, and that's something we'll talk about in the next segment. But at the end of the day, they have so many dudes on the outside. Isaiah Horton is a beast. Ryan Williams isn't even the best receiver on this football team. Jeremy Bernard is an absolute incredible player that is the best receiver on this football team. They do need to figure out some things. The run game needs to be better if they want to win a national title. I think that's without argument at the end of the day. But this team, if they're going to be able to throw the ball at that level, they're going to be able to beat a whole lot of teams. Plain and simple. They opened this game with 2 14-play, 70-plus yard drives. They go 9 for 9 on third down to start this thing. There's no better execution in college football that you'll find. And it's not all Georgia's fault. There were definitely some openings that Georgia needs to be better about. But at the end of the day, that execution level from that Alabama passing offense was just downright ridiculous. So a lot of things left on the table for Georgia in this football game. There's no two ways about that. You fumbled near the goal line with Nate Frazier. Obviously, you have the fourth down call that people don't like at all. You have the drop touchdown. Alabama had, I think, 2 different drop touchdowns. It was a little bit all over the place. There's no doubt about that. But there's something here. And I don't know what it is. I don't know what happens to Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs when they see Alabama on the other sideline. But something happens, and they just don't play their level of football. They don't play as aggressive, they don't play as on the front foot, and they play just a little bit timid. And the other side, Alabama seems to feel uber confident whenever they see Georgia. So whatever that is, it's hard to describe. It's something that happens in college football every now and then, and this one's very, very real. There's no doubt about that. I do want to say something about Alabama before we get out of here. This is a really good team. They played some really good football on Saturday, and they should be very, very proud of that. As far as I'm concerned, they are still a week-by-week proposition with Kalen DeBoer, because if you'll remember last year, they got a huge win against Georgia, then went on the road and lost to Vanderbilt. Well, they get Vanderbilt at home this upcoming weekend. They are still a week-to-week proposition. They are still a team that you're going to have to watch every single week, because we saw what we saw against Florida State. Now, they've cleaned up a lot of that stuff. They've played so much better football, and they deserve a ton of respect for that. But it's not to say that's not in them still. So a lot of things still to figure out for Alabama, a lot of things that they need to just continue to tweak, continue to get better on, but that looks like the team to beat in the SEC, right up there with Ole Miss right now, and we'll talk about them here in a second. But for Georgia, you're still very good. On both sides of the ball, you are going to be good. Now, there's definitely some things that need to be fixed, particularly starting slow. You can't fall into holes against a team like Texas, or especially a team like Ole Miss later in the season, and expect to win that football game, but you should be okay. Definitely some tough games up ahead, but I still like this team to go 10-2 or better and find their way into the CFP. It's just one of those games where it's hard to describe. It really cannot be described in a lot of words. Georgia has an Alabama problem, and they got to figure it out one way or the other, or they're gonna get in their way of being able to compete for national titles, because you could very well run into this team again. And if you can't beat them right now, you might not be able to beat them then. But we'll talk about it more as it unfolds. I think Georgia's going to be more than fine for Alabama. Got to regroup and play a really good Vanderbilt team on Saturday. Ole Miss beats LSU by 5 points. They really beat LSU by about 13 or 14 points. This was, I don't want to say domination, but Ole Miss was literally I think 4 yards away from scoring that touchdown, but LSU was able to get the punch out, get a massive play, and take back over on offense. The reality of the matter is they should have been down quite a bit at halftime. I believe 21-7 would have been the score at halftime had they ended up scoring at that moment. I just think it was one of those games where the LSU that everyone had been talking about, the LSU that everyone had been saying, is this really a great team? Is this really a great offense, or is it a team that's just living by the skin of their teeth? It all kind of came to fruition in this game. They cannot run the ball for whatever reason. LSU cannot run the ball, and they haven't been able to the last couple of years. They have a team on the other side that isn't perfect by any means, but you have a guy like Trinidad Chambliss that can make all types of plays and can do all types of things. And they did a relatively good job against him, this defense, but the reality of the matter is you could not get off the field when you needed to on third down. Trinidad Chambliss goes for 385 total yards, 1 touchdown in this game. It's just one of those games that you look at Ole Miss right now, and I've seen a couple of people asking the question, and it's a fair question to ask. How is Ole Miss better than they were last year? You lost Jackson Dart, you lose Walter Nolan, you lose Chris Paul, you lose all of these incredible players on your defense and your offense. How in the world are they better at football this year? It's as simple as you have a run game. You now have a run game that you can work off of. You had 2 rushers over 70 yards in this football game, Keywan Lacey and Trinidad Chambliss, obviously. You had 3 pass catchers over 60 yards, none of them over 100. You dominated the line of scrimmage. You really did a great job in this football game, just winning the margins, doing little things throughout this football game and running the football efficiently enough. Now, you take Trinidad Chambliss out of that equation, I don't know how it looks. There's no doubt about that. I think he helps that, and I think that's why he needs to be the quarterback moving forward for Ole Miss. But the reality of the matter is, when this team can run the football, when Lane Kiffin teams can run the football, they're going to be really hard to beat. And now they can run the football, and LSU just can't. And they got a big problem to figure out. There's no doubt about that. For Ole Miss, they get Washington State this upcoming weekend, weirdly enough, before a bye. And then it's at Georgia. That's a huge one. If they can find a way to win that game, then everything changes. They could go undefeated and become the number 1 team in the country. If they lose that game, then they're right back in the pack of just trying to find their way to the CFP. Still a very good team. Cannot say enough about what Ole Miss has been able to do this season, particularly with a guy coming in that you did not expect to be your starter going into the season. For LSU, Garrett Nussmeier's injured. There's just no doubt about that. I think if you're trying to deny that, you're lying to yourself. It doesn't take anything away from what Ole Miss and all the teams against LSU have been able to do, and it doesn't necessarily excuse LSU being this anemic on offense. It's just to say you're getting about 75, maybe 80% of Garrett Nussmeier right now. He is not throwing the ball confidently. He's not throwing it with the zip that he does. And frankly, if there's one thing I know about Garrett Nussmeier, he's going to rip the ball. That is the way he is. That is the way he plays football. He's not doing that right now. He's throwing kind of ducks, and it's obviously something physical. You never really know how severe it is, and frankly, I tend to believe he's still the guy that gives you the best chance to win, plain and simple. But the reality of the matter is, you got an injured quarterback, you have an offensive line that's not playing great football, you have a run game that is downright non-existent, you have a running back that's injured as well to go along with that. You're in trouble, plain and simple. There's a number of games that you have the ability to go out and win, find your way into the CFP, totally leave this one in the past, but this offense is playing terribly. If Garrett Nussmeier does not get healthy and really healthy really soon, you're going to have a problem. You're going to lose 3 more games, and you're going to be at the end of the season thinking, we left another one on the table. And not the offense this time. We left a really good defense on the table, and now Garrett Nussmeier's walking out the door. A lot of things to figure out for this football team. If Garrett Nussmeier gets healthy, a lot of things change in a hurry. That's just plain and simple. You still got to get a run game that can help him out, and an offensive line that can help him out in a big way. So that's plain and simple. We'll leave it there for the time being. For Ole Miss, you're probably the outright favorite in the SEC. I don't think you're the betting favorite just because that's how betting works. But at the end of the day, the job that Lane Kiffin's done has been downright incredible. Still a tough road ahead. There's no doubt about that. Still got Georgia. Still have, I believe, Alabama, if I'm not mistaken. Still have a number of big-time games. But the one thing that I want to take away from this game is, more than anything else, Ole Miss had an 11-play, 5-minute drive to close out this game. All runs except for one big-time pass from Trinidad Chambliss. That's something they couldn't do last year. Last year, they would have given the ball back to LSU, and that defense would have had to make a play to end that football game. The offense was able to just assault that one away. That is a huge, huge thing for this football team. And moving forward, they might not be a more talented football team. That's a better football team because they can run the football and win games in different ways, where last year they weren't throwing the football, they weren't scoring points, plain and simple. Incredible win by Ole Miss. They move up to very, very high in my top 25, and I'll get to that at the end of the show, but a number of things to love about Ole Miss. For LSU, a number of things to question. And finally, Illinois escapes against USC in really one of those games. We talked about it with Ole Miss. Probably should have been a 14-point win. This one probably should have been a 14-point win. Actually, I was thinking USC, if Illinois doesn't get punched out right at the goal line going into halftime, they're up 21-7 on USC going in, not 14-10. It totally changed the complexion of this football game and changed it from, man, Illinois is really tearing this team apart to USC's in this game. Let's see what happens in the second half. Now, here's the reality of the situation. You give Luke Altmaier the ball back with 2.5, 1.5, I don't care how much time. You give him, he's going to go win the game, plain and simple. He's done it every time and again throughout his career. He was clinical while doing it in this football game, and Illinois gets a win that they badly needed. This is a really incredible response from the offense that got downright pushed around a week ago. For the defense, I really don't think they played as bad as the box score shows. Now, obviously, they have some things to figure out, and the reality is I don't think they're going to be elite on that side of the ball, but the USC offense is always going to be pretty hard to contain. They did enough, and I think that's the big thing here for Illinois and for really every team in the country. We'll talk about that later. Doing enough is a massive win at this point. Let's just get wins and keep moving down the road. So for Illinois, you got to feel great. The schedule's still very wide open. At Purdue, then it's Ohio State, and at Washington. You find a way to win one of the Ohio State and Washington games, assuming that you're beating Purdue. If you find a way to win one of the Ohio State or Washington, you're still in a very solid position for a CFP berth. Now, a lot of mess is going to happen. I can promise you that, and we'll talk about that at the end of the show as well. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of things to like about this Illinois team. Still a little bit worried about what happens when they run into an offense and a defense that can slow them down just a little bit, but still a very interesting team that can put some really good things together. For USC, I just think they're going to fall a little bit short. I don't think this is a bad football team by any respect. I think the defense still isn't quite there, and I think that shouldn't be all that surprising for USC fans as of right now. You lost some big-time bodies in the offseason now. You add a guy like Jamal Jarrett. That has been absolutely huge for you. You add a Keyshawn Silver that I believe is going to be a great player, but the reality of the matter is you're going to have to get a whole lot better, a whole lot more talented, and that takes time. Now, I don't think they want to wait too much longer, so we'll see what happens throughout the rest of this season, but I think you have a team that continues to move in the right direction. I just think it's baby steps, and that's rather frustrating. But now you go to Michigan, you have Notre Dame on deck. Can you get one of those wins? Can you find a way to get one of those and at least keep a little bit of momentum? I don't think this is going to be your year, as some of you might have thought going in. I don't think this is going to be your year, but I don't think you're necessarily quite as far off as some people might say. That being said, I've said that for a number of years. So let's see what happens over the rest of the year for USC. A talented team, but a lot to figure out over there. The good news is you have Mekhi Lemon. Went for 11 catches, 151 yards, and 2 just ridiculous touchdowns in this football game. He's one of the best wide receivers in the country and a guy that no matter what, he's going to give you a shot in just about every football game you play, especially that Notre Dame game where I'm expecting an all-out shootout. But it's going to be really fun to watch what these two teams do because I think both these teams are alive. Now, I think both these teams are probably on the outside looking in from the upper echelon of the Big Ten, but there's plenty of an opening here. And Illinois being able to get up off the mat, find a way to win a game where it would have been really easy to fold late in that game, and a lot of teams would have. Illinois doesn't because they have a great head coach in Brett Bielema. They have a great leader in Luke Altmaier. Some incredible, incredible stuff from this football team, and really just an incredible weekend of really, really good football. Those 4 games obviously define the weekend in a number of ways, but at the end of the day, just incredible, incredible stuff from this group. Incredible stuff from Ty Simpson, from Dante Moore, from Trinidad Chambliss. Incredible from all those guys, and really adds a lot of confusion to the college football world, and we'll get into that when we get into the winners and losers towards the end. But let's do a little bit of a break here. When we come back, let's just talk about all the rest of it. We got Virginia, Florida State, Ohio State kind of dominating Washington, although it didn't look like that. Texas A&M sneaking out one against Auburn, and a number of other things right after this, so stick with us. Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about the big games from this past weekend. Penn State can't win the big one. They just can't quite get it done. Georgia cannot beat Alabama. They just can't quite do it. Ole Miss gets a big-time win. Illinois kind of escapes, kind of dominates a very weird game up there in Champaign, but a big-time win for the Illini nonetheless. Let's get into all the rest of it, because there is a lot more to get to. Frankly, we won't even get to all the games that I wanted to get to. That is entirely my fault for being a little bit late on this week's reaction show, but we'll get into an update at the end of the show to give you a better idea how we'll be able to cover everything going forward. But let's start with this one. Let's start with Virginia and Friday night getting a huge win over Florida State, 48-38, or 46-38, excuse me. Incredible. This was maybe the perfect college football game. I think the only thing that is not ideal is it wasn't on a Saturday. It was on a Friday night, but those Friday night games are plenty fun as well. It was a weird Friday night game. A top 10 team goes on the road to a trap game. You have ebbs and flows, good quarterback play, bad quarterback play. You get double overtime. You get one of the best, maybe the best field storming I have ever seen. And you get that little bit of Virginia wearing the throwbacks from the last time they beat Florida State. It was just an incredible, perfect ball game that had so many incredible things that make college football what it is. There's very few games where you have 46 points on the board and both quarterbacks have multiple turnovers and everything's all over the place, but they also have a guy that goes over for 150 receiving yards like Deuce Robinson did and then makes the mistake at the end of the game and can't catch the ball. Ridiculous. Also, definitely not a catch. I know there's Florida State fans that disagree with me with that. Definitely not a catch for Deuce Robinson in that second overtime. But for Florida State, this is one of those that just got away from you. And it's hard for me to sit here and say Florida State's totally fine and they're going to totally bounce back and they're going to beat Miami next weekend and they're going to roll through the rest of their schedule. I don't know that that's going to happen. There's problems on this defense that need to be fixed, and definitely if they're not fixed, they're going to be in big trouble. There's no doubt about that. But the reality of the matter is, I think this is just one of those games, and I think you're going to see it a lot throughout this year where a good team walks into a place and just gets beat by a team that maybe is a little bit inferior, but not quite as inferior as you might think when you think about Florida State against Virginia. You're thinking about a pretty good gap. It was a gap. There's no doubt about that, but it wasn't quite as big as some people wanted it to be or some people think it's going to be going forward in this college football season. It is going to be weird. There's going to be games like this just about every single week, and now Virginia's at the top of the ACC, and there's 6 ACC teams with a conference win as of right now. None of them are Miami, Florida State, or Clemson. Now, Miami hasn't played one, so we'll see what happens with Miami. Florida State or Miami will get one this weekend, but it just reeks of a weird title game, of a Georgia Tech getting there, or Virginia, or a Duke that is still in this thing, got a big-time win this past weekend over Syracuse. So a lot is going to happen in this conference for Florida State. Just kind of bounce back. If you find a way to get a win this weekend, you are right back on track. If you lose, there's definitely some things to figure out. You've gone from beating Bama and feeling great, being on top of the world, to a 2-loss team within 4 weeks, and the other 2 teams you played were downright terrible. So still would be alive, but a lot would be up in the air, and after week 1, the questions would be flying very quickly. We'll see how this unfolds, but an incredible, incredible game in Charlottesville that did just about everything you want a college football game to do. Ohio State went on the road and got a 24-6 win. On the outside looking in, this looks like a struggle for Ohio State, and at times it was. Early in this first half, they did not play good football, especially offensively. Here's the thing. This game was never in doubt. And it's just because the Ohio State defense is the best unit in the country by a mile. I thought it was going to be the Texas defense coming in, and that's a very, very good group. There's no doubt about that. What this Ohio State defense does is different in every sense of the word. And we can talk about, Matt Patricia coming down from the NFL and making things a little bit more confusing. We can talk about Caleb Downs being the most valuable player, period, but especially defensive player in the entire country. We can talk about all of that. This defensive front is incredible. They've done some incredible things, and you lose a number of guys from a year ago that incredibly talented, no doubt about that, and really veteran guys that know exactly what they're doing. Caden Curry, Kenyatta Jackson, Caden McDonald, those guys are just outright more talented than the guys that left. Now, it's not to say that they are much more talented or they're going to be tons better, but they're more talented. Caden Curry had 3 sacks in this game. He was an absolute nightmare all over the place. Kenyatta Jackson, the exact same. Caden McDonald's becoming one of the best defensive tackles in the country. Arvell Reese is terrifying at linebacker along with Sonny Styles. Somehow Sonny Styles isn't the best linebacker on that team right now. It is ridiculous what this unit can do for Ohio State. It is ridiculous what they're going to be able to do the rest of the season. For the offense, Julian Saban is remarkable, plain and simple, and he's a guy that I think a lot of people are going to overlook throughout this season because they're not asking him to do too much. Now, the deep ball, I think, is something that maybe you could argue he needs to work on, but the reality of the matter is they're just not pushing the ball down the field all that much because I don't think they need to. I think they know they have an elite defense. I think they know that when they get that run game going, and tell me, and believe me, Bo Jackson is your guy. He's a freshman. I get that. He is your guy going forward. They're going to lean on him a little bit more. But the reality of the matter is they don't need to be special offensively. As crazy as that sounds for a team that has so much special talent offensively, they don't need to be different. They don't need to be special. They don't need to be exotic. They just need to line up and play football because that defense is going to hold teams to under 14 points, under 20 points every single game, no matter who you play, and you're going to be put in a position where Julian Saban can make the throws. He just hasn't been asked to make the throws all that much this year. He will be at some point, and I have no doubt that he's going to make them. So we'll see what happens the rest of the way. They did a great job of locking up Damon Williams. Just can't say enough about this Ohio State defense. It's a terrifying unit that I don't think anyone's going to have success against. But for Washington, we'll see what they can do the rest of the way. A lot of different things to go down the road for them. Very dangerous team. Probably not a playoff team the way that I might have thought they could have been, but we'll see what happens with them the rest of the way. For Ohio State, you still got some tough ones. There's no doubt about that, and still some things to deal with. You get Minnesota before a big game at Illinois. Definitely some things to figure out, but the reality of the matter is if that defense is playing at that level, you're going to see an undefeated Ohio State at least walking into that Michigan game, and then we'll see whatever happens in that one. Texas A&M, sneaks away from Auburn 16-10 in this one. There's a few teams that just got to win and moved on. A&M was one of those teams, and it's a good sign. I understand that this was far from perfect. A&M really should have won by 30 points, if I'm being totally honest. They outgained Auburn, I believe, almost 350 to 117 or something like that for Auburn. It was bad for the Auburn offense. It's been bad for a very long time for the Auburn offense, and I'll talk about that here in a second. But for A&M, there are things to worry about here. No doubt about that. Your longest pass play was 24 yards, and that's not necessarily to say the sky is falling by any means, but you're going to need those explosive pass plays because you really kind of needed a career high from Le'Veon Moss to win this football game. I think you're going to be fine. I don't think this is a catastrophic thing by any means. The Auburn defense is very, very good. They were going to force you into tough positions. That was the reality of this. So it's not to take anything away from A&M, just to say there's a couple of things that if you shut down that deep passing game, maybe you have an opening against this A&M team. For Auburn, I'll be plain and simple. Your head coach isn't good enough. And that's not to say, take anything off of Jackson Arnold's shoulders or the offensive line shoulders or all of that stuff. The inability for Hugh Freeze to get this talent to play to their talent level is incredible to me. I don't know how it happens. This offense essentially scored 3 points because the one time you scored a touchdown, you started on the 2-yard line. This is a bad offense, and it's not that they have bad talent. Now, Jackson Arnold does need to play better, but the reality of the matter is you have a head coach and a play caller that is not doing you any favors, and you're leaving a lot on the table because of it. And the great news on top of that is I don't think you can fire him because you fire him, everyone's out the door, and if that's what you want, then fine, that's all well and dandy, but You're going to have a long time rebuilding that thing in the SEC right about now. So a lot of stuff to figure out for A&M. Going to need more from Marcel Reed moving forward, but at the end of the day, getting this win is huge. It was going to be a tough game, an inspired team coming in, especially on the defensive side of the ball. You were going to have to handle this one and got out of there. You did it. Keep it moving. Now you got a tough one against Mississippi State coming up. Indiana escapes against Iowa. This one actually was a little bit closer than that A&M game we just talked about because the Indiana offense sucked. For 57 minutes of this game, they were downright terrible. And then they scored 10 minutes in the last 2:23. They win it by the skin of their teeth. They got a little bit lucky. There's no doubt about that. But at the end of the day, they execute the offense when they absolutely need to. It's one of those that I think you can get worried about Indiana, and a lot of people will. A lot of people will dismiss Indiana because that's the way Indiana is, and they want to dismiss Indiana, plain and simple. That's what a lot of people want to do. This was totally understandable to me. You're coming off a massive win against Illinois. Obviously, you do get a bye next week, but you had Oregon right after that. It makes total sense that this game was close. It makes total sense that this game was down to the wire. Finding a way to get a win is all you needed to do. The cover thing is a little bit wild. Fernando Mendoza apologizing for it is a little bit more wild. Overall, it was an ugly game. You move on. Keep it simple. That's it. You keep moving, and Indiana still feels very confident for Iowa. I don't know, man. The offense is playing better, I guess. It's not much better, but you're taking steps forward. That's the best I can put it for Iowa right about now. For Indiana, I think you're fine. I think there's just one of those games that you have to go throughout a season. Tennessee skipped away from Mississippi State barely in this one, and I was talking about this going into the weekend, and a lot of people were, to be totally fair. Tennessee and Mississippi State was going to be a really fun game. It delivered in every sense of the word. It was so much fun to watch this game unfold. It went back and forth, a true dogfight where it looked like Tennessee had dominated at points and they were going to take over, that Mississippi State would punch back, and it looked like they were going to be able to win the game, and then Tennessee was able to punch back. So incredible stuff from this Tennessee football team. I think the biggest thing about Tennessee right now is they're not fully healthy. Jermod McCoy's coming back. Ricky Gibson's coming back. The run game is going to get better. The offensive line's going to get better. This is going to be a really good team. And they're already a good team, no doubt about that. But this is a team that is going to be really dangerous throughout the rest of the season, especially if you have Tyree West and Joshua Josephs playing at that level of football. You're going to be able to do a lot of special things. When you have that offense and that pass rush, that's just about all you need to win a lot of football games. Love what Tennessee is doing. For Mississippi State, I don't know how you don't feel good about this team right now. Obviously, there's some things that obviously you wanted to win this football game. You had a 4th and 5 where you could have won it, and Tennessee makes a great play, scores a touchdown. I understand that. But looking forward, you get A&M this Saturday. Why can't you beat A&M? Who says you can't beat A&M and score with them and put up some big points and win that game? Then you get a bye before Florida. Who says you can't beat Florida? Who says you can't walk into a Texas game where they have to come to you and win that game? Because the Texas offense has looked downright terrible. This is a team that is so dangerous that is going to throw wrenches into the SEC. I don't think they're winning the SEC. I don't think they're making a run after this game by any means. What I do think they're going to do is throw a wrench into this thing and totally ruin someone's season, whether that's keeping them out of the SEC title, keeping them out of the CFP altogether. A lot is on the table for Tennessee. I just think this team is going to get healthier, scarier, faster, all of the good stuff for Tennessee fans, and I feel really confident about this team moving forward. Wake Forest deserved to win this football game. Georgia Tech wins 30-29 in overtime. They did not deserve to win, plain and simple. This one got stolen from them. It got stolen from Wake Forest as plain as day, really. Wake Forest had the ball with about minute 55 left, I want to say. They had the ball. Georgia Tech has 0 timeouts. They're on the Wake Forest 35-ish, I believe. And Georgia Tech jumps off sides. It was a 3rd and 5, just to set the stage fully. It's a 3rd and 5. Georgia Tech jumps off sides. Plainly jumps off sides. Very obvious. Everyone that's watching that game can notice that he jumps off sides. Robbie Ashford throws the ball downfield, as you do when someone jumps off sides. You take the free play. You see if you can get a PI or a big play downfield. They don't call it. They didn't call the offsides. That if you can't see that offsides, I genuinely don't know if you have vision. And I mean that. I'm not even speaking hyperbolically. I'm not trying to make a joke. I genuinely believe, how can you have eyes and not be able to see that offside? It's absolutely ridiculous. The reality of the matter is, also, Georgia Tech came back from 17 down in this game and made that moment matter. So there is that part of it. I understand that it doesn't just come down to one call. The reality of the matter is, if that call was made, Virginia Tech or Wake Forest wins, Georgia Tech loses. The call wasn't made, Georgia Tech's able to win, Virginia Tech loses. It's that simple. I don't like. It's just ridiculous. There's no other way to put it. They go to overtime. Credit to Georgia Tech for getting the win. Credit to Georgia Tech for getting the stop on 2 after Wake Forest scored, which totally agree with the Wake Forest going for 2 there. I think you have to take the chance when you have it. But at the end of the day, credit to Georgia Tech for getting it done. As I said before, you got to find a way to get a win and move forward. You got handed one. There's no doubt about that. Now, take it and run with it, but you got handed one in this one. Now you get a bye week, and then a really, really interesting Virginia Tech team that just got a big-time win under interim Philip Montgomery. Then you go on the road at Duke, Syracuse, at NC State. If they somehow go 4-0 in that, which I definitely question with how they played in this game, but if they go 4-0 in that, they're very well on their way to the ACC title, but they got to play a whole lot better. Plain and simple. We'll see what happens with this football team. You got really lucky. Now take it and run with it and see what you can do the rest of the season. Wow. Notre Dame did just abusive things to Arkansas all afternoon. Notre Dame was running on more open grass than I have ever seen. It was ridiculous what that defense did for Arkansas in this football game, ridiculously bad. And the headline to this one is Sam Pittman is no longer the head coach over there at Arkansas. He has been let go. Very upsetting situation for a number of reasons, frankly, because I don't think he got a fair shake there. Plain and simple. And that's not me saying that. That's the athletic director saying that. He said plain and simple that he did not have the financial resources to compete in that conference. I think he's a good head coach. I think he fit that program really well. I think he was going to get them where they needed to go if he got the proper buy-in, and he didn't. Plain and simple. So I don't know where you go from here because, frankly, your AD is absolutely not selling that job to anyone. He's saying, we're really good at baseball. We're really good at basketball. We're going to compete for national titles there. Probably not going to do it in football, though. Not exactly the pitch you want, by any means, from your athletic director. So, ridiculous stuff going on there in Fayetteville. It is going to be Bobby Petrino taking over, as crazy as that sounds. That is going to be the interim, and it sounds like he's going to get a chance to get that job full-time, and he's going to try his darndest. I can promise you that. Has already kind of cleaned house over there. I don't know who's coaching the defense this upcoming week or going forward, but a lot of stuff is happening over in Fayetteville right now. We'll try to get a handle on it sometime throughout the next little bit. But at the end of the day, new changes over there in Arkansas, and it's because Notre Dame just beat the crap out of them. And they needed this one really, really badly. No doubt about that. They are in really good position moving forward with the way USC played. You got to feel pretty confident you can go to 10-2 and probably get into the CFP. I'm not going to sit here and say that I love it. I'm not going to sit here and say that I hate it because got to see how they go throughout the rest of this season. But the reality of the matter is, a huge game that they absolutely needed, and they move forward with at least a little bit more confidence. As for Arkansas, I don't know how desirable that job is. I'll be plainly honest with you. At this point, we talked about the AD stuff. That's not helping. But also, I just don't know how much you can really compete financially with all these other schools, especially if you want to do what they want to do on basketball and baseball. So I don't know. I don't know what that looks like. Maybe Rhett Lashley because he played there, although I think SMU probably wins that battle in terms of which is a better job right now. But it's a side conversation. We can get into it maybe on Thursday, probably sometime next week as they get a little bit deeper into this thing. But interesting times over there in Fayetteville, and we could just very well have Bobby Petrino back at the top of that program, and that would be something to behold at the very least, is what I'll say right now. Arizona State gets one that they absolutely needed in very dramatic fashion on Friday night, 27-24 over TCU. TCU was in control of this game, plain and simple. Like, they were controlling this game. It looked like they were going to win it until the final 5 minutes. Arizona State goes on an 11-play drive to tie it with about 2 minutes left. Prince Dorval makes a massive play on Josh Hoover, gets a sack fumble, recovers it, sets him up for a go-ahead field goal. And then TCU gets the ball back, and you're thinking, okay, at least they have a little bit of time. They can find their way back. And then Josh Hoover throws a pick on the second play, and the game's over. It was a collapse. There's really no other way to put it. Now, it obviously is a team with Arizona State that is going to be really hard to beat no matter what. But the reality of the matter is you had this one in hand if you're TCU, and you left it on the table. I think it could come back to bite you. For Arizona State, If you didn't win this one, it was about to get bad. I'm just going to be totally honest. You needed this one really, really bad. They do get a bye. Then they head to Utah for a huge one, followed by Texas Tech, Houston, and Arizona and Iowa State. It's not going to be easy. Plain and simple. Those 4 games, if you find a way to go 3-1, you're in fantastic shape. If you go 2-2, you're definitely in a position where you need some help elsewhere in that conference. But at the end of the day, a win they absolutely needed, and definitely some things to figure out, but a huge one on Friday night. For TCU, I said it, I think this one's going to haunt them. I think in a Big 12 that is going to be so hard to win every single week, and I think just about every team is going to take 1 or 2 losses the rest of the way. I think this might be the game they look back on and think, if we just win that one, we're playing for a chance to go to the CFP instead of sitting on our couch right about now. BYU gets a win against Colorado, another game where you just needed a win and to keep moving forward. If you're BYU, I'm not super sold on BYU, but that's something we can talk about later on in the season. Incredible by Bear Bachmeier to go into his first road game, going down, going into the fourth, and he was the best player on the team for BYU in this game. Was obviously the leading passer, but the leading rusher as well for BYU in this one. For Colorado, you head into the fourth quarter up 4 points. Then you give up a touchdown to start the fourth quarter. Understandable, totally fine. You also total 9 total yards. In the entire quarter, you throw an INT to finish this thing. You got to play more consistent football. If you're not going to play 4-quarter football, especially in the Big 12, you're going to lose just about every single one of these games because there is no lead that is safe. There is no lead that's going to be massive in this league going throughout the season. If Colorado can't finish games, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. And frankly, I tend to believe they already are. And I tend to believe if you don't move to Julian Lewis here pretty soon, this thing could get bad in a hurry. But at the end of the day, for BYU, not a team I'm huge on going forward, but they definitely do have a path. They get West Virginia this upcoming Friday, then go to Arizona. They go 2-0 in that. Then they have a tough stretch that really will define their season, but a really fun team to watch with a freshman quarterback that I think is really fun and will only continue to get better for that Cougar football team. A missed opportunity for Colorado here, no doubt about it, and I tend to believe that's what they're going to be this year. But a really fun weekend. Definitely some games that I left off there. We had the Pitt-Louisville game that was absolutely incredible and had my boy Zephian Wade, I believe, the ball boy out there. It kind of got a little bit of fame at the end of it, a little bit of crazy situation on the sideline there, but everything worked out over there. An incredible game that totally shakes up the ACC. We'll talk about at the end how I'm going to kind of try to do a better job of totally going around the sport on Sundays, and we'll talk about that at the end. But definitely want to take a break here. When we come back, let's get to the winners and losers from this past weekend. Curses had a big weekend in college football, as did young quarterbacks, and SEC fans had a confusing weekend. And we'll talk about it all right after this, so stick with us. Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about kind of all the other games that happened this past weekend. We talked about Wake Forest getting one absolutely stolen from them, Notre Dame doing just mean things to Arkansas and leading a cleaning of the house out there. Other than Bobby Petrino, he might just be hanging out by himself around there right about now. But at the end of the day, let's move into the winners and losers from this past weekend. There were quite a bit of winners, not as many losers this past weekend. Now, maybe there were, and I just don't want to highlight them too aggressively, but definitely some big-time winners that I want to talk about. And let's start with the one that is the most obvious and probably the most painful to talk about for certain fan bases out there. Curses had a big weekend. In college football, there is something to be said about a curse, about a mental hurdle. And Georgia and Penn State have them. Georgia can't get over the Alabama curse. Penn State can't get over the big game curse, and it can't really be described. For Penn State, it might be a little bit easier to explain just because they're not quite good enough, they're not quite talented enough, they're not quite physical enough to compete with those teams at the very top level. For Georgia, I don't know. I don't know what it is about Bama. I don't know what it is about this football team. They've changed coaches. There's been there's probably been 4 or 5 different iterations of players since they've been able to continuously beat Georgia. I don't know what happens there. That being said, I'm much less worried about Georgia moving forward in terms of a national title and CFP type berth because I know they can beat great teams. I just know they can't beat Alabama for whatever reason. For Penn State, I don't know that they can beat any true national title contender, and that is a huge worry, plain and simple. It's a very weird sport. These things happen all the time. I don't know how you can really explain them. They can't really be explained, if I'm being totally honest. But at the end of the day, it is something that both these guys are going to have to get over. Kirby Smart, at some point, going to have to beat Alabama. He did, to be totally fair, did get him in the national title. You're going to have to beat him at some point consistently. For Penn State, I don't know. It's a very interesting situation over there where it wouldn't be crazy to me if this was the start of the end for James Franklin up there. It also wouldn't be crazy to me if this was start of kind of a new era where this kind of flipped a switch. It's really confusing. I don't know what to make of it. At the end of the day, the curses got them once again, and they were very, very sick of those curses. Another winner is young quarterback talents. These guys were incredible this weekend, and they've been incredible really throughout the entirety of the year, and it was always the conversation that's been had early on this season has been what happened to the quarterback play. The quarterback play in college football is so terrible. No one's playing good football. Arch Manning's playing terrible. DJ Lagway can't throw the football. Cade Klubnik is playing all over the place. Garrett Nussmeier doesn't look like himself. That one's injury. But at the end of the day, the quarterbacks that we all thought were going to be incredible, including myself, have not played good football. That doesn't mean there hasn't been really good football played. Dante Moore played about as good of a game from a quarterback as you're going to see this past Saturday. Julian Sain, right there with him, making every right decision and putting the ball exactly where it needs to go. Ty Simpson's not a young player, to be totally fair, but it is his first year starting, is playing some elite football. Trinidad Chambliss, obviously a veteran talent, but also a guy that's stepping up to the FBS level, and not only that, the SEC level this year, and playing some incredible football. Yes, the quarterbacks that we hyped up going into the season aren't delivering, and there's definitely some things to figure out. You look forward at the quarterback talent in the world of college football, I feel really good about it. I think Dante Moore is going to be an NFL star for about 10 years. I think Julian Sain is going to be an NFL starter for about 10 years. I still think Arch Manning's a good quarterback, as crazy as that sounds. I do think he's going to be fine, and he's going to find his footing slowly throughout his career. Might not be fully this year, but at some point, I do believe he's going to find his footing. Then you got guys like JKS, Jaron Kiave Sagapulotele, incredible football player. Dylan Lonergan, playing really good football up there at Boston College. We have good quarterbacks, is really what I'm trying to say in college football. They just might not be the names that we're all accustomed to, and that's fine. It's just a little bit weirder of a year, and it was going to be that way. With so many different quarterbacks coming in, with so many different starters all around the country, maybe it was the new guys that were going to take over and not the old heads that had been there for a while and hadn't quite broken through. The winner was the trap game favorites, and leaving Florida State kind of to the side of this because they're the only one that really fell victim to this, but Georgia Tech stole one from Wake Forest, and we've talked about that plenty. I won't rip into that anymore. Tennessee survived on the road at Mississippi State. Indiana snuck one out against Iowa. Notre Dame just brutally abused Arkansas. But at the end of the day, a lot of games that you're looking at and you're thinking, there's got to be a couple upsets here. There's got to be a couple of moments where these teams fall and they're not able to get big-time wins, and their seasons are kind of in weird positions going forward. And we almost got that with Georgia Tech. And we definitely did get it with Florida State. I thought there was going to be more of them, if I'm being honest. I picked Arkansas to win that football game, as crazy as that sounds. I picked Arkansas to win that game against Notre Dame. I thought Iowa was maybe going to be able to beat Indiana late in that football game. Same thing for Mississippi State and Tennessee. So all those teams snuck away. And it's something that we'll talk about here in a second. That's an absolute win. Finding a way to win these football games is not going to be easy this year. And if you find a way to win, especially on the road like a Tennessee team did, take it and run with it, and then you figure out the rest of it later. But going to be an incredible season, and you're going to have trap games like this every week. The favorites are not going to win every week like they did this week. Now, Florida State withstanding. But the winner/loser of this weekend is the SEC fans. This thing is confusing, man. Can anyone tell me the best 5 teams in the SEC? I know everyone's going to have a list. Does anyone have the same list? Is there any remote consensus of, is Ole Miss the best team? Is Alabama now back to being the best team? Maybe a Tennessee team that fell a little bit short against Georgia but is playing really good football right about now. A&M's playing good football and is undefeated. Oklahoma, the John Mateer injury changes some of the trajectory, but still a good team that's playing great football right now. What do you make of this conference? I went down it and I tried to figure out how many teams are really thinking they can win the conference right now. How many fan bases are sitting there saying we are going to, or at the very least, we can win this conference. I think there's 10 of them. I really do. I think there's 10 of them, and that's leaving out a Mississippi State fan base that has to feel great about where they are. I think they understand that they're probably not winning an SEC title, partly because that schedule is an absolute nightmare. But when you talk about Texas fans, they're always going to think they're going to win the conference. Plain and simple. That's coming from a Texas fan. I understand the way Longhorn fans think. Always are going to think they're going to win the conference. No doubt about that. Oklahoma, the exact same. A&M, Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, Ole Miss, Missouri, absolutely thinks they're going to get something done here. Vanderbilt absolutely is a team that's in this thing. And I'm missing another one, and I don't know why. But at the end of the day, there is a number of teams that are looking at this thing and saying, we can get it done. We can find a way to get to Atlanta, and then who knows from there. Ole Miss has probably looked the best thus far, but it's far from flawless. There's far from an elite team in this conference, and you can argue that makes that conference worse. You can argue it makes it better. I think it's a moot argument. I think it just makes it different, and I think it's really, really fun. There's no doubt about that. I think you're going to have maybe a champion that has 3 losses by the end of this thing. They go in 9-3. They find a way to beat a 10-2 team because this thing's going to get ugly. If your team finds a way to win in the SEC this year, take that win and run with it. I don't care if it's 1 point. I don't care if it's 50 points. Take that win, run with it. It's going to be all over the place, and it's going to be really hard to figure out who from that SEC belongs in the CFP. And I don't know if I trust the CFP committee to do it, but that's a conversation for another day. The winner were the Miami Hurricanes. They didn't play football this past weekend, and they got to watch Florida State lose. They got to watch Georgia Tech struggle and probably should have lose. They got to watch Louisville and Pitt engage in an all-out brawl, including the ball boy getting into a little bit of a scuffle, but a legend over there nonetheless. It's insane what Miami has been able to do this season and what everyone else has kind of helped them to do this season. And their schedule is set up in such a way where if they get a win against Florida State this weekend on the road, which tall order, there's no doubt about that. We'll talk about that game on Thursday. But at the end of the day, if they get that win, then they get 13 days to get ready for a Louisville team that really is the last big threat on their schedule. There's still some tough games, no doubt about it, but this is the game where if you win against Florida State, you win against Louisville, I think that's probably an undefeated team by the end of the year, at least going into the ACC title. And then we'll see what happens from there. It's very possible that Ohio State or Oregon goes undefeated and they're the number 1 team going into the CFP. It's also very likely they slip up at least once throughout the season, and Miami is sitting at the very top with a chance to go win a national title. Now, big questions about Miami, and I think a lot of them will be answered affirmatively or negatively this upcoming weekend, but at the end of the day, they're a big-time winner this past weekend just by sitting on their couch. The loser is officiating in college football. I talked about it a lot. Wake Forest lost a game because of the officials, plain and simple. And now they shouldn't have let Georgia Tech back in that football game. I think that's fair to be said as well. It doesn't change. It's just ridiculous. I don't know how you miss it. I really don't. I don't know how. First of all, I don't know how you miss it, plain and simple. I also don't know how you miss it, and I still haven't heard anything from that specific official. I still haven't heard anything from the ACC as a whole. I still haven't heard that they were wrong about this. It is ridiculous the way that we go about this system. It's not to say that refereeing isn't hard. It's incredibly hard, and we give them maybe a little bit less respect than we probably should at a number of times. The reality of the matter is you are taking wins away from people and you are altering the sport week by week with calls that are just downright ridiculous. It's not to say that they're totally decided by one call. It's not to say that they're totally deciding these football games one way or another. But I can now remember, I think, 3 different times for the past couple of seasons, past 2 seasons, where we've had games where outright, if one call is called the correct way, the other team wins, plain and simple. The Wake Forest game is obviously the most recent example. LSU last year against South Carolina, the one call, if that's made the right way, South Carolina wins that football game, plain and simple. That's just the reality of that situation. So it's ridiculous. We have to find a better way to do this, and it's not necessarily to say these people need to get fired and can't do a game ever again. It's just to say I want accountability. I want to know why that guy didn't make that call. I want to know how he didn't make that call. And frankly, I kind of want him to get fined for not making that call, because I know for a fact Jake Dicker would have gotten fined if he said that was a ridiculously bad call. So we just have to be better. This is a multi-billion-dollar sport that has a penny and dime officiating crew, and I really don't understand why. It doesn't make sense to me. Well, it makes sense to me because the people making decisions don't care about how good the sport is. They care about their paycheck. I understand that. It's uniquely frustrating to watch a sport that is so incredible, that is so special, and that is meant to be insane, It's not meant to be insane because of the striped guys. It's meant to be insane because of the players on the football field, and there's been multiple times where that's been taken out of their hands. It's ridiculous, and it needs to be fixed. And then you have the Amari Campbell play. I don't know how that's not targeting. I don't understand targeting. How is that targeting, not targeting? But James Smith gets kicked out of the second half of the UGA game and the first half of the Vanderbilt game for a very relatively normal play inside the box where he, yes, does lower his head a little bit. But what are we talking about? We're doing just a disservice to this game, to these players, to these coaches when we put out people and we put out a system that just doesn't encourage these refs to do their job correctly all the time at every second and do their job consistently all the time at every second. And it should at all times. It should never be a question that referees should be right. They should be better. I'll leave it at that for the time being. I don't want to go on a crazy diatribe here, but it's just ridiculous. A sport like college football should be so much better about this, and it's going to be a problem going forward regardless. I totally understand that. It's never going to be totally fixed, but you're altering games because of how bad these officials are and because of how confusing the officiating system is. Overhaul the entire thing. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how quickly you can do it, but you got to do it. Back to the bright side of things, the winners is us. This was awesome. This past weekend was absolutely incredible. We got maybe the best field storming of all time. Scroll White is okay, by the way. The Florida State receiver, he did find his way out. Looked like a Virginia player went and got him, so shout out to that guy. But at the end of the day, he is fine. That field storming was incredible. We had multiple incredible games, one incredible game in every single slot like I feel like we've had all year. And shout out to Brooks Austin over on the Film Guy Network for this one. There were 14 games between a ranked opponent and another Power 4 opponent. So that includes the 4 ranked games we had and then all the other games that were just conference opponents or, I'm trying to think of one. Iowa State played Arizona. That's an example of this. Of those 14 games that were played between a top 25 team and another Power 4 opponent, 11 were decided by one score. 11 of those games. And the average margin, now Notre Dame kind of skews that just a little bit, but the average margin was around 7 points in those games. It was incredible to watch what unfolded this weekend, and I'm going to say this for every college football fan out there right now. Enjoy this. This is going to be a weird season. It's going to go all over the place. Your team is not going to win every week. Your team is not going to be perfect. There are going to be wins that you don't feel like you deserve. There's going to be losses that you don't feel like you deserve. If you get the win, run away with it. Because the reality of the matter is it's going to be really hard to get wins this season. It's going to be really hard to find a way to get one win every single week and continue to move forward. If your team isn't necessarily in it, enjoy watching your rivals fall because a couple of them will. I can absolutely promise you that. There's going to be moments where it ebbs and flows, where it looks like Texas is playing the best football in the country, and then they fall off a cliff. Ohio State looks like they're on top of the world, and then they fall off a cliff. Oregon looks like they're dominating, and then they fall. It's going to happen. I promise you. I don't know who it's going to be. I tend to believe it's not going to be Ohio State and Oregon, but at the end of the day, I don't know who it's going to be. It's going to be weird. I can't make outright promises about what's going to happen this season, and that's the good thing because college football always delivers no matter what it's going to be, no matter who, if your team benefits or doesn't benefit, it's going to be a weird ride. So if you get wins on Saturdays, enjoy those wins. I don't care if it's by 1 point against Middle Tennessee State or by 50 points against Alabama. Enjoy those wins because they're not going to be super easy to come by this season. And whoever can get to 10, 9 maybe, finds their way into the CFP, and that should be enough this season. It's going to get weird. Just buckle down, enjoy it, and we'll see who comes out on the other side. This one was awesome. This was an incredible weekend of football, and we got one coming up that's going to be downright incredible. I did want to give some final thoughts before I got out of here, mainly about the show going forward. We're going to do shows on Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Feel like I'm a little bit behind by the time I get my picks out on Wednesday. Want to make sure I can get those out as quickly as possible. So we're going to do Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday moving forward. We'll be back on Thursday to make all of our picks for this upcoming weekend. Usually the Tuesday show will be our pick show. So just keep that in mind moving forward. Also, a lot more content coming on my X account, on the Instagram accounts, on all of the different stuff on YouTube as well. A lot of different stuff coming. I'm going to be dropping daily blogs after pretty much anything that happens in college football, but going to be dropping my weekly top 25s, my Heisman rankings, all of that good stuff. And if you want to follow on any of the socials, there they are right there. On X right now, it's Brzee_Thomas and JACFB podcast. That's also that on Instagram. So please do follow on both those places. Definitely does help out a lot. And just a lot more content coming out throughout the rest of the season. Couple ideas that just feel like I don't have enough time to really get to on this platform. Want to make sure I get to it. So the blog's going to be much more active. The social pages are going to be much more active on Saturdays. You're just going to see a lot more of me going forward, hopefully, and hopefully that's a good thing for a lot of you out there. But thank you guys so much for tuning in to just another edition of Just Another College Football Podcast. Please do like, subscribe, comment, do all that great stuff. Follow across all of my pages. Means the world to me. Really want to continue to do this, and probably I'm going to continue to do this. Absolutely love doing it every single week. Love talking college football, and absolutely would love for you guys to support me. So thank you once again for listening, and I will see you guys on Thursday to make some big-time Week 6 picks.